Namaskaram, Jai Shri Ram. Welcome back to the We Are Not Lonely podcast. The numbers keep getting higher and higher, and I, for one, can't believe that this is happening, but this is such an amazing experience that I'm gonna keep doing this. Welcome back, everybody. So, a lot has happened since the last podcast. I've been traveling around quite a bit. I think I've spoken about it several times, but basically, a bunch of my friends are getting married. At around the same time, I've attended about 4 weddings in a single week, and I have another 2 left to go. That's gonna be kinda hectic, huh? So, the point is, all this traveling means a lot of content. I do have a bunch of things that I'm gonna be needing to work on already. I have quite a decent amount of material. I've been writing some stuff as well. My return to YouTube has been sort of delayed by external circumstances. Also, the whole situation where you stop doing something and you have to start doing it again is a bit of a roadblock. I admit, I agree, I accept that particular fact. But don't worry, things are in motion and we'll get there eventually. Now, for what it's worth, the podcast is still going on. I haven't stopped. It's out every single week. And in some strange twist of fate, the days have kept changing until it has arrived at the final, which was what it was initially. We've gotten back to Friday. So I will try to keep it up on Friday every week, since that's what I started with, until the foreseeable for the foreseeable future. And once I have a bit of a better schedule, I will upload it and I will let you know. Alright, cool. So a lot of things have been happening in India, one of which is the new Sengol, the new Parliament building. I mean, it's not a new Sengol. The Sengol has been installed in the Parliament building. And I'm bringing up this particular topic because it's caused a lot of controversy and a lot of talking points in the media. But that's a good thing because that means content for me. Anyway, this particular trip to Chennai was beautiful because it's been about 4 years since I saw one of my closest friends and I got to see him again. But yeah, we got around to playing music for a very long time. I think we were playing the guitar till about 3 a.m. or something, and I wanted to spend every moment possible with him because I knew that I was leaving in a couple of days, so I just stayed up as much as I could, and then eventually I crashed. The funny thing was, my friend described me as sort of an Android phone in which, there's this fast charging option. You just put it to charge for like 15 minutes and you're good for the entire day. Because at a particular point throughout the night, I did take like a 15-minute bar nap while these guys were outside chilling. And I was ready to go. This was around 11 p.m. and I was good to go for another 4 or 5 hours. I was up till 3:30ish, because that's when I was barely about to fall asleep when my friends arrived at the room and they had to take their flight back from Chennai to Coimbatore. So that was the entire situation. Now, at the time I was traveling, all of this controversy was actually happening. And dude, the fun thing was I actually traveled by train this time. I took the Vande Bharat Express. What an experience. I took the executive share, which is kind of expensive, but all things considered, dude, man, it was beautiful. I enjoyed it. I took the executive class chair and man, it felt kind of special, man. Like big chair, recliner and all that. It was very comfortable. It had like a neck thing. I could pass out and all. Had about 5 hours, and I think a lawyer from the High Court and Supreme Court was next to me. And eventually we got around to talking towards the end of the journey as well as at the beginning. But I had things to do, so I started doing them and he left me alone. But it was quite the interesting experience, I'll say that much. Anyway, regarding the Sengol, the new Parliament building and the rest. Now, India has finally inaugurated its own Parliament building. Now, the fact of the matter is that the old Parliament building was designed by Lutyens and Sir Herbert Baker in 1912 and 1913, and it was completed in 1927. The foundation stone for that was actually laid by a foreign national, Prince Arthur. I'm not going to call him His Royal Highness and all that bullshit. Why would I? So stupid. Anyway, so basically that old Parliament building was designed by foreigners. The foundation stone was laid by a foreigner, and it's important because at that particular point they were colonizers, not just foreigners. They were colonizers. They designed and built that building for British India. At a particular time, Bhagat Singh has actually thrown bombs from the Visitors Gallery into the Parliament's Legislative Assembly as well. But yeah, so that was the situation. That's the history of the old Parliament. It was a gift. No, how can I say it was a gift? It was a leftover thing from the British colonial times, and it's literally a symbol of British coloniality. It was, like I said, it was designed by British people. The foundation stone was laid by a member of the imperial royalty, imperial bloodline, whatever you want to call it, from London. It doesn't really make sense for us to keep clinging on to that. Now, India has recently celebrated Azadi Ka Amrita Mahotsava. So that's like 75 years of independence. That's what the tagline was for the 75th year of independence, Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsava. And I think it's kind of fitting that at this particular time, 75 years after the British left India, we have completely thrown off the yoke of coloniality, more or less. Right? But of course, this entire thing was also followed by a great deal of controversy. A bunch of political parties, including the Congress, have boycotted the entire inauguration, which honestly I think is kind of weird. The Parliament building is not just for the BJP, it's for whatever Parliament comes into power. And on a personal level, I do admit that I might be highly biased against the Congress, but looking at their actions, it does not seem like they're really for a united India. They take every single opportunity to boycott, blockade, and just throw in disharmony whenever possible. They're not really performing as the opposition. They're just finding every single issue. They're opposing India at this point because they're not even able to admit that the Prime Minister and his office are doing good work. It's a right to criticize. Every person has a God-given right. I mean, at least in democratic countries, every person has this democratic right to criticize their leaders, their political leaders. And sad is the day when democratic leaders are no longer able to be criticized by the ones who elected them. That's the death of democracy. And not like how Rahul Gandhi is going around the world screaming about the death of democracy because he's been convicted and therefore disqualified as an MP, and he's unable to win any seats, etc., etc. It's something that I'll be getting into towards the end of the podcast as well. And I think this particular podcast is going to be kind of short because I do have a decent amount of detail that I've done. I do have a decent amount of things that I want to talk about. So without further ado, let's finally get into the issue at hand. Right? So, in the earlier podcasts, I've been speaking about how the Congress has been in control for a majority period of India's history. Right? It was the BJP government has come into power very few times. I think ever since India achieved independence in 1947, I've already spoken about how the independence was falsely attributed to the Quit India movement by Gandhi and Nehru and the rest of the Congress. In reality, it was the naval revolt, aka the last war of independence, that actually ensured that we got our independence, and it should be attributed to Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose. And one of the reasons that I've spoken about Nehruji in such a negative light is because he has actively worked to suppress the true story of Indian history. And I've spoken about this in a particular podcast in the past. Now, there's been this constant attempt at like at the highest level of the government to falsify our history and culture. This has been the tone that has been set by Nehru. This was the president that he set while he was PM, when he unlawfully kicked out the person who was supposed to be doing a job as the historian of India and the freedom movement. This was when R.C. Majumdar refused to be a court historian. He was very vocally anti-Gandhi. Quite a few. He had not anti-Gandhi. He had a very critical view of Gandhi and some of Nehru's policies. And I've spoken about how Nehru himself had issues with Gandhi. He's written about this. He's written about these issues in his book, where he talks about Gandhi's flip-flopping and how it's very difficult to trust him, etc., etc. Now, more or less, on average, the Congress has ruled India for a total of nearly 50 years, 49 years, from 1947 to 1996. They've ruled, that's 59 years, dude. So they were in power for a very long time. And then they were in power again from 2004 to 2014. So that's like nearly 60 years of Congress rule in India. So 60 years out of 75, it's like almost 80% of India. 80% of the time that India has been free, it's been ruled by the Congress. This is a stat now. All right, we've done it. Actually, it was 59 years. I've rounded it off to 60. So close to 80% of the time that India has been an independent nation, it's been ruled by the Congress. Now, bear in mind that as what has happened is, in these almost 60 years of freedom, India has primarily been ruled by the Congress, like I said before, and mostly by one particular party. Okay, so like I said, India has been primarily ruled by the Congress. They've ruled for nearly 59 years now. Of course, there have been a bunch of other people, bunch of leaders apart from the Gandhi family and the Nehru family that have ruled, but more or less the Gandhi family, the now Gandhi family, which traces its lineage to Nehru, has ruled for a total of 16 plus 15, 31 plus 36 years. And of course, a lot of people argue that Manmohan Singh was the puppet prime minister. So 46 years out of the 60 were ruled by one political family. And this is 1, 2, 3, and 4. Almost 4 generations of one particular family have been ruling India. So, like, someone's actually done a calculation. I seem to be slightly off. It's not 59. I just calculated all the years that the Congress has been in power. It looks like a total of 54 years, approximately. Alright, so 54 years the Congress has been in power, and that is 72% of the time that India was free. BJP has had 30% of the time that the Congress has had to rule this country. Okay, and they recently got into power in 2014, and they've been ruling ever since, and they've been the ruling party ever since. They have 1 year left, and general elections are coming up next year, which is why everybody's ass is on fire, especially our dear Mr. Rahul Gandhi. And that's what we're going to be talking about right now, right? So there's been, like I said, there's been this constant attempt at the highest level of the government to falsify Indian history. This was the precedent set by Nehru. He silenced R.C. Majumdar, one of the greatest historians. He could have been one of the greatest historians of India, but he wasn't. The prevailing idea among that particular crowd, mostly the left liberal crowd, which is the Congress, and it's basically still followed by most of the current politicians among the Congress. There's like this bunch of ideas that they subscribe to, that they believe. Alright, first and foremost is that the concept of India slash Bharat began only after independence. 2. It was the British that helped unify us. 3. The Mughals and Muslims did not commit a genocide when they invaded India. 4. The Mughal Muslim rulers did not destroy temples or persecute Hindus. 5. There exists a unique Indian Islam which is responsible for the Gange Jamuni Tehzeeb. And this Gange Jamuni Tehzeeb is supposed to be this mythical unity between the Indian Hindu and the Indian Muslim. Because of this rare, unique breed of Indian Islam. Finally, going back to point number 1, that there was no civilization. There was no continuous civilization for thousands of years. It began only in 1947 with the speech, the tryst with destiny, and so on and so forth. Now, this is a view, like I said, that has been held by Nehru. He has great disdain for the Hindu fold, he has great disdain for the Hindu civilization, etc. And that's kind of seen in all of the Congress policies. Now, again and again and again, I do have to admit that I do have severe bias against the Congress, but that has only happened because I've done my due diligence and I've been reading and I've been noticing what they've been doing in the public discourse. Alright? Yeah. Essentially, they also have extremely dangerous ideas which they're touting right now. Primarily, the Prime Minister candidate who's going around to foreign countries and speaking against his motherland now. Now, of course, he was born to a lady who's not Indian. His mother, Sonia Gandhi, is not an Indian. So I don't think he has that Samskriti. Chanakya itself has spoken about how a son born to a foreign mother will never feel that the land he's born in is his homeland. And that's the situation of Rahul Gandhi. It looks like, at least. Because he goes out and badmouths India at every opportunity that he gets. Now, the ideas that he's talking about itself are, number 1, the idea that a Hindu Rashtra would be inimical to the minorities. Now, nothing can be further from the truth, because as a civilization, Sanatan Dharma has existed for many years, for millennia, easily. And we have this history of being open to other faiths. We have had no problem with accepting faiths that were different from our own. Now, I'm not saying that everything was a perfect picture. There were definitely issues. I will question the intensity of those issues, the veracity of the claims that are made by certain individuals in the present. I will question them, but I will not deny the fact that there were some injustices. But by and large, India, especially to its religious minorities, Bharat, especially to its religious minorities, has been very welcoming. India is one of the few places that Jews are not persecuted. They haven't been persecuted for a very long time. It's also the nation where we have quite a few Zoroastrians. Now, the idea that if India is proclaimed as a Hindu Rashtra, the minorities' rights will be in danger and that India will become a Hindu Pakistan, which is one of the claims that a lot of speakers from the Congress tout quite often on national television. And I think some of the names that come to mind are Shashi Tharoor, primarily. Now, the idea that they are actually comparing us to Pakistan, like a Hindu Pakistan, it's again like there is no place in the world where there's a Hindu majority country which has been declared as a Hindu Rashtra. India is the only place, Bharat is the only place where Hindus are in the majority. And it's still not declared a Hindu Rashtra. So you don't have evidence to make that claim. The reason that Pakistan is the way it is because a particular religion namely Islam, is in the majority there. And all of the religious minorities are persecuted, including Christianity, particularly Hindus. Which is why there was that whole bill, Citizenship Amendment Act, and all of that to ensure that people could come in, persecuted minorities could come in, especially those that were of a dharmic fold. Okay, that's number one. To summarize my argument, there is no data showing what will happen if India is declared as a Hindu Rashtra, because there is no other Hindu Rashtra in the world. There is no other place with the majority of the population being Hindus. India is the only one. And every other place that has a majority population has a majority population of another religion that is completely antithetical to secularism. And we'll get into that later. Alright? 2. The idea that India/Bharat is not a nation. Now, I've spoken about this particularly in the last podcast. Rahul Gandhi went and spoke about this, I think, in Cambridge. He's speaking about how India was never a nation. He's actually brought this up in the parliament as well. A lot of my friends shared it as, wow, what a firebrand speech. Not really understanding the import of his words, right? Like the veiled suggestions in it. When Rahul Gandhi says that India is not a nation, it is a union of states, he is essentially sowing the seeds for Indian balkanization. Now, I've already disputed this with evidence in another video, but I'll just repeat it because repetition leads to memory. And maybe it'll help form those neurons in your mind. Anyway, the point is that essentially the claim that India is not a nation and that it's a union of states is false, because if you look a page before this particular page 2 of the Constitution, it talks about India, that is Bharat, is a nation. Alright? It describes so on and so forth about the nation. Now, second page, when they talk about a union of states, it does not talk about a federation of states. Dr. Ambedkar was very clear that the term union was used to ensure that states could not secede from the nation that is Bharat. So there again, we have clear evidence that it's not constitutional for states to declare their independence from India, from Bharat. And yet, the person who wants the highest seat in India, the Prime Minister's office, is going around making a claim that India is not a nation, that Bharat is not a nation. Moving on. They have this constant diatribe that democracy is under threat, and it's very convenient for them, I suppose, that democracy is only under threat when the Congress is on the losing side. So they refuse to accept the mandate of democracy where people go in and vote for BJP. People vote for the BJP and the BJP wins, and people vote, the majority of the people vote for the BJP wins by a landslide, and suddenly democracy is under threat in India because the Congress is lost. But if you flip the situation and look at what has happened in the recent polls in Karnataka, where the Congress won by a landslide, there's no problem. Like over there, it's a victory of democracy because Congress is won. And people, the way that certain news agencies have actually referred to the parties is very interesting. They call it Modi's BJP and India's Congress, which is quite the interesting distinction to make. Both are Indian, sir. Now, clearly one is more anti-national than the other. One is only interested in furthering dynasty politics. This is the 4th generation scion of the illustrious Nehru lineage. This is that wants to sit on the throne of free India. And he's not getting to do that, which is why it looks like he's throwing all of these tantrums like an overgrown baby. Oh my god. मम्मी मुझे बोला था कि मैं पीएम हो जाएगा, क्यों नहीं हुआ? Democracy is under threat. Oh my god. So anyway, the point is that democracy is only under threat when the Congress loses, and it's perfectly in place when Congress wins. And like, this is what you call being a sore loser, dude. Get over it. Accept the mandate of the people. People have spoken, accept it. People who supported the BJP and saw its loss in Karnataka have accepted. Okay, people have spoken, they want Congress, we'll see. Can't do anything else. People want Congress, so accept it, no. What is your problem, dude? Why are you throwing a tantrum? Oh no, I lost, therefore democracy is in danger. What logic, dude? Moving on. Like, this is a sensitive topic because people refuse to accept the possibility that Hindu phobia exists. It cannot exist, but on a global level, Hindus are actually a minority. And we do need to understand that across the world, Hindus are a minority. It's only in India where Hindus are a namesake majority. And I say namesake majority because we don't seem to be united. Because if we were, I highly doubt an anti-Hindu party like the Congress would be in power. So anyway, the point is that Congress has a particularly anti-Hindu approach to everything that it does. It started with Gandhi and Nehru, and there are certain reasons why I say that Gandhi is also anti-Hindu. He has exhorted Hindus to go die at the hands of Muslims, and this would help deepen the Hindu-Muslim brotherhood. This has happened during the Mopla massacre after the failure of the Khilafat movement. There's documentation for this particular fact. This is the sort of, and he's gone all the way, like I've mentioned, like, I don't know if I've mentioned this particular fact in a previous podcast, but during the time that Gandhi was killed, one of the reasons that he was killed was, at that time, Pakistan was making incursions. The Pakistani army was making incursions into Kashmir, and Gandhi at that very same time decided to go hold a fast unto death, because India had promised to give Pakistan 30 crore rupees, and Gandhi's like, yeah, we said we have to give. If you don't give, I'll sit and fast until I die. This is literally Gandhi. And that's when people have decided, okay, this guy is dangerous, he needs to be bumped off. Certain parties, not everybody held that view. Alright? So this is something that I'm going to explore more once I have all of the data. Maybe I'll have an entire episode dedicated to the anti-Hindu Gandhi. Again, like, okay, I'm just going to have to say this. He is a mixed bag. On certain issues, he was very strong for Hindus. But whenever it came to Hindu-Muslim unity, he was always for the Muslims. He favored the Muslims a little too much. And that's one of the main reasons that he was bumped off. Okay, moving on. We'll get into that later, like I said. Okay. Now, finally, the BJP came into power in 2014. It's been almost 9 years since then. And in the most recent elections in 2019, the BJP won with a resounding success. It was one of the first times in a very long period of time that they didn't even need an alliance of parties to form the government. It was a clear thumping majority. Most of the nation voted saffron. So keeping that in mind, that is literally democracy's mandate. Keeping that in mind, you have to remember that the Congress had very few seats. They weren't even able to hold a decent number of seats to become a strong opposition. They were a very weak opposition. And so now they've gotten to the point where they're just opposing for the sake of opposing. They're opposing everything that the BJP does, not even looking at the merits or the demerits, nothing. Every single thing that the BJP does, the Congress is opposing. For example, like I just said, the new parliament is not something that people should be doing politics over. The installation of the Sengol, which I'm going to get to, is not something to be done, is not something, the installation of the Sengol in the new parliament is not something to do politics over. But again and again, the Congress has this history of hating Hindu and Indian culture, Bharatiya culture, and they like to bring that up at every opportunity that they get. And they love opposing for the sake of opposing, so this is like killing two birds with one stone. So with that, we've reached the actual point of this particular episode, which is the controversy surrounding the Sengol. Recently, the Sengol was installed in the new parliament, building, and this was met with a huge flurry of opposing speeches. And of course, there was that usual diatribe of Hindu-phobic arguments, which included the following. 1. It is not a symbol of democracy. 2. It is not a secular symbol, and therefore it has no place in the secular democracy of India. 3. It is an attempt by the ruling government, to place Hindutva into governance. So, the truth is, 1. It's actually a symbol of power, justice and Rajadharma. On the Sengol, it's actually inscribed. Basically, there's a Tamil inscription on the Sengol which directs the devotee of Shiva to rule the land as the heavens are to be ruled. Okay. It's originally something that was used during the Chola times. It's a symbol for the transfer of power. So whenever there was a transfer of power, the Sengol would pass from one ruler to another. Now, bear in mind, we're not a monarchy anymore, so there is no real transfer of power happening. The Sengol is just being placed in the parliament. Alright, it's placed next to the speaker. No one's going to wield it. No one's going to speak about it. But, yeah. Now, the point is that Sengol is a symbol of power, justice and Rajadharma. And if anyone has any understanding of the Shastra, it would remind them. The Sengol is supposed to remind the person who generally holds it in their hand to rule with justice, to not get swept up in power, to remember to be a devotee. There's something bigger than you. And finally, to rule the earth as the heavens are ruled. So to bring heaven onto earth in a way. Moving on, this second point is that it's not a secular symbol, it's a religious symbol. Yes, it is a religious symbol, but it's also cultural. Okay, and second of all, India is primarily Hindu. And third of all, the Indian government is not a secular freaking government. And I've spoken about this several times, and this is a pet peeve of mine, which nobody seems to understand. Alright? Now, the Indian government holds in power the entire country's temples. It leeches off billions and billions of rupees. Temples like Tirumala, Guruvayur, Ananda Padmanabha, all of these temples are in state control, and they leech all of the income from the temples to ensure that salaries of Maulvis and priests are paid, the Hajj subsidies, they give money to other communities. So clearly it's not a secular nation because they control the temples. So if you want to make this claim of being a secular nation, free the temples. Give away government control of the temples. And of course there will always be this argument, but then there will be corruption because there's so much money. There is no entity in the world that is more corrupt than a government, than the state. As soon as the state comes in, there is corruption. So you want the state, which is the epitome of corruption, to prevent corruption from happening. Let's not mince facts, okay? We're all adults here. We know how corruption works. There's been a huge movement away from corruption in the past couple of years. It's still there. Perhaps it is reduced. Okay? But to claim that the government has to ensure that corruption does not take place because there's a huge amount of wealth, when there's a fact that Idols have been stolen, jewelry of the devatas have gone missing, gold, all of this has gone missing from the temple. And you want to make claims of the state preventing corruption. There's nothing that is more illogical than this. Now, finally, moving on, it's not a secular symbol. The flag of India bears the Ashoka Chakra. It's the Ashoka Chakra. It was a symbol of the king Ashoka. 2. The drawing that adorns the Constitution of India is an image of Ram, Sitama and Lakshman returning to Ayodhya. 3. In the Supreme Court, there is an inscription saying, Yatho Dharma Tatha Jayaha. Where there is dharma, where there is righteousness, there is victory. So, to summarize Dr. Anand Ranganathan in a horrible way, do you want to tear up the Constitution and set fire to it? Do you want to raise the Supreme Court? Do you want to burn the flag because it contains all of these non-secular symbols? No, right? Absolutely not. So what is the problem with the Sengol in the parliament? The only answer that I can say is that it belongs to a particular faith. It's a Hindu symbol. And they cannot have a Hindu symbol in the parliament. Despite the fact that the majority, we don't know the current census, we don't know the current demography, but for now, Hindus are the majority of India. So despite the fact that Hindus are the token majority of India, you don't want a symbol that connects to their culture in the parliament. Now, of course, the main issue was Rahul Gandhi's response to all of this. Okay, he's mocked the Sengol as a stick. He's mocked the Prime Minister for doing a Shashtang Namaskar to this Sengol. He has literally said he's lying down in front of a stick. Now, this is making fun of an entire culture. And I'm starting to have my doubts that Rahul Gandhi is a Hindu because he doesn't even know what a Shashtang Namaskar is. Any Hindu, any practicing Hindu knows that you perform Shashtang Namaskar. You perform it to elders as well, in fact. I used to perform it to my guru. Every time we would go for the Veda class, before we start, we would do a Namaskar, a Shashtang Namaskar, before and after the Veda class. And it's not just the guru that we're teaching. We're respecting. It's not just the guru that we're respecting the entire tradition, the parampara, we're respecting the Vedas, we're respecting the fact that he's our guru and he's choosing to teach us the Vedas. All of this comes into the fact. And our man has the gall to deride the tradition of Shashtang Namaskar.
I think if you sat Modi ji down next to God, Modi ji would start explaining to God how the universe works. Yes, and God would get confused that what have I created?
Rahul Gandhi fires new salvos at Prime Minister Narendra Modi, this time from American soil.
They can speak to scientists and explain science to them. They can, speak to historians and explain history to them. They can explain, warfare to the army, flying to the Air Force, whatever they want they can, And at the heart of it is mediocrity. That they actually don't understand anything.
Addressing the Indian diaspora in San Francisco on Tuesday, the Congress leader accused the Modi government of attacking federalism and misusing central agencies. He referred to the placement of Sengol in parliament to claim the Prime Minister was diverting attention from real issues.
I think the Parliament House, these are distractions. The real issues in India are unemployment, price rise, spread of anger and hatred, a crumbling education system, price of education, price of healthcare. These are the real issues. BJP can't really discuss them, so then they have to do the whole scepter thing, lying down and doing all that. So, aren't you happy I'm not lying down?
He's gonna go about in a few months, mark my words. He's gonna go about to a bunch of temples next year, wearing a janau on top of his t-shirt or kurta or whatever. He's going to be wearing a janao on top of that, just to prove to other people that he's a janaodari and that he's basically a Hindu. And which is kind of weird, because I don't think the Gandhi family were actually Brahmins. They were actually Baniyas, if I remember correctly. Now, not to say that only Brahmins have the right to wear the thing and all that, but this guy is claiming to be a Brahmin with the thread. And that's, of course, what the Srimad Bhagavatam has said. People will be known as a Brahmin just by wearing the thread. Now, the point is that our man is going to go about claiming to be a Hindu in 1 year after he is literally shat on the traditions of Hinduism, of Sanatana Dharma. I just remember this. But then again, like, there's... You can't really complain about this particular fact. He's like his great-great-grandfather or great-grandfather. Like his ancestor Nehru, he is unfortunately a Hindu. Yeah, his great-grandfather. Like his great-grandfather Nehru, he is unfortunately a Hindu. He has no idea about the vast civilizational ethos behind this particular thing. He has no idea about the greatness of Sanatana Dharma. I don't think he's ever read one of the books associated with Sanatana Dharma. I'm just gonna play that clip and sign out. So there you go. Look at him mocking all of this, and in foreign lands where people don't even know the context of what it means. I honestly have my doubts about Rahul Gandhi, man. I don't think, by the way he's behaving, he's not fit. He seems like an overgrown child, petulant that he didn't get to sit on the throne, and he's throwing a fit. He's not even playing the part of an opposition leader correctly. There are better ways to be a better person to oppose the freaking BJP, man. You could start by accepting the fact that the BJP has done good. Like, for example, the Morgan Stanley report has come about saying that India has transformed in the 9 years that BJP has been in power. It's grown massively. It handled the COVID pandemic with its massive freaking population in a remarkable manner. It developed its own vaccine and he gave vaccines to other countries. And all the time, the opposition was crying. First was, we don't want Indian vaccine, we want Pfizer vaccine. Second, when India created its own vaccines and sent it abroad, they were like, why are you giving abroad? We should give first here. They mocked every single thing that the government has done. Mock the things that they've gotten wrong, dude. But at the same time, appreciate the things that they've gotten right. The fact remains that India as an economy has grown. The infrastructure has grown. Many new airports have come into existence. Vande Bharat is an amazing freaking train. All of these things have been done by the central government, led by the BJP. So accept the fact that they've done something good. But they can't, because they're so losers. Anyway, I think that's about the thing. It's been this entire complaint against the Congress. Yeah. Oh well. Thank you for listening, everybody. This is it for today. The We Are Not Lonely podcast will return. Punarmilam, Jai Shri Ram.